Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all safe and well. A little bit awkward start. Just that. There we go. Hi, Ross Bailey here, product specialist for Line 6, and we are going to talk about PodGo. And more specifically, and I'm setting myself up for potential complete disaster here, but I'm going to try and get a tone in the style of John Mayer, kind of Continuum era. We'll talk about the gear he used, his kind of recording setup, how to attempt to replicate that within PodGo, and try and get somewhere close. And there's a couple of little secret sources. And I see all your comments. Evening, everybody. John's here. I'll shout you out in a bit, mate. Doc's here. So we've got some product specialists as well. I'll try and answer all the questions I can, try and keep on top of them. The other guys will be there too, so don't be afraid to ask questions, and be gentle because, yeah, this has been a challenge for sure. I love dialing in artist sounds. This one in particular, yeah, it's kind of a thing. So disclaimer straight off the bat. Obviously, what you're hearing this on will determine how accurate this is going to be. The guitar I'm using is not kind of ideal. It's an awesome guitar, so I'm using that, which is Yamaha Pacifica. So this is it's completely stock apart from I put bare knuckle pickups in, and they're kind of medium to high output pickups. John will use kind of much more vintage style pickups in his guitars, which will contribute to the sound and certainly the gain structure, which we'll get to a little bit later. But I'm going to work with what we've got, and we'll see how we get on. So how John sets his sound up, and this has been relevant for a bunch of years now, and particularly in the Continuum era, kind of tone searching, I think you could call it. John's got all the gear, right? You look at his collection, you watch some of the rig rundowns, and it's like, oh, wow, yeah, you've got all the kit. And I think kind of the last count at one stage, there was in the region of about $500,000 of backline. And we're talking vintage Fender amps, we're talking Dumbles and Two Rocks, none of which are cheap. And the thing is with John's tone, the tone you hear is actually a combination of multiple amps, two, certainly three at any one time, and kind of various pedals. So we'll go through the pedals in a bit, but what we want to try and do is recreate the sound of three amps with one. Because obviously with PodGo, you can only have one amp on at once. So we're trying to recreate a 3-amp rig with one amp and one cab and one mic. I told you this was a challenge, but you know we'll get there. So I'm dropping things all over the place. John's here. Hello everyone. I sold my Pod HD 500 so I could get a PodGo. Marvelous. Mr. John who? John Mayer, Nicholas. Yes. And you know what? This is going to kind of divide a lot of people. Some people love him, some people hate him. Some people don't care. Big John Mayer fan right here, and certainly kind of a very sought after tone. So let's get into it. Let's see what we can do. So I will load up my PodGo edit. So you'll see kind of what's going on here. So we've got kind of three different gain boxes. Now, the problem that I discovered with this is in real life, John Mayer's rig is super expensive. In the digital world, it's expensive as far as DSP goes as well. So I couldn't cram everything I wanted to in here. So I've actually split this off into two different presets. So, but we're going to concentrate to begin with on the core tone, right? The kind of sound that you're going to hear most of the time in the majority of his stuff. So I do have a wah in here, but I'm not going to use it. We're not using the effects loop. I've got a compressor. I've got the Air Apparent gain box. I've got the Minotaur. I'll come back to the amp in a minute. I've got a 63 spring reverb, It's got a volume pedal at the end, and then I am using the post EQ. I've not tweaked this at all. For the most part, all I've done with this is add, and I'm pointing at my Podgo like you can see it, but you can't because you can't see me. Apologies. So the mid gain, I've just bumped the mid gain up. I've not changed the frequency. This is just how this came out. And all I've done is bump that mid range up ever so slightly. So the amp I'm going to use is the Cali Texas Channel 1, which is kind of that American, kind of quite clean, but very thick and robust. So kind of reminiscent. I don't have a model of a Two Rock or specifically a Dumble steel string Singer. If you want to see how expensive John's rig is, just Google Dumble steel string Singer. There weren't many of them made. They're super rare. And yeah, if you can find one, it's going to set you back $120,000. Crazy money. And he also uses Two Rock amps from that era as well. And he had a signature one. And again, this particular model is kind of reminiscent of that. It's a big, beefy, kind of juicy low end. It's a little bit compressed, but it's super clean. It's got a lot of headroom. So it works quite well for this. You'll notice that the bass is kind of quite low. The drive is about halfway. The mids I've got just above midway. Treble, presence to taste. Everything else is kind of stock as you load it up, basically. For the cab model, I chose the 212 Interstate. And I went through a bunch of different ones, and this one just kind of it did it. For me, it kind of had a certain mid-range character, a certain clarity, and a tighter low end. So you see the low and the high cuts on there. Again, I don't think I touched those at all, but I did put a ribbon mic on there. So I've got it right up to the grill, and you'll see the early reflections there. That's set kind of high, and I'll explain why. Let me. High, medium. So the setup, the recording setup in the studio, he had multiple amps, like I said, and he would close mic those, but he would also, to get this kind of in the room sound, and just kind of combine, just glue everything together. Basically, he would have a couple of ribbon mics in the room, so that those early reflections, kind of crank those up. That's going to give you more of a room sound. Yeah, just a bit more vibey, really. So crank those up. The spring reverb's going to give you that kind of spring reverb sound. And you'll see this kind of come together in a minute. Just check this. Calm, it would be great if I could get the part I need. Calm, maybe hit me up afterwards, and we'll try and get you hooked up on that. Dave, what is best in your opinion? FR/FR speakers, a small 15-watt tube amp to fill a small room with 8 people max, and a full band. That's kind of down to you, mate. Try them both. The FR/FR will give you all of the options. You'll certainly be able to fill a room. A small tube amp will sound great as well, but it's going to be a completely different vibe and will limit your tonal options. So the only thing I can suggest, and it's a complete cop-out, and I apologize, check both solutions out and see which one kind of works best for you, really. So there we go. Yeah, people are dealing with that. Splendid. Right. So back to that. So if I give you the basic tone here, so this is just the amp on its own. So it's a cool sound, a bit of reverb on there. If I turn that reverb off, you can actually kind of hear that room thing that the cab's giving you. So I've got 76%. If I turn that down, it's kind of a fairly uninspiring sound. If I crank that back up, we've got a bit more kind of vibe. Put the reverb on. So there's your kind of core amp sound. It's super clean. So there's two pedals that that I've noticed John uses a lot. Individually, they give you a thing, but together is kind of where it happens, I think. So he uses a compressor a lot, and the compressor he's used for a long time is an Analog Man compressor, which is fantastic. And it does that thing. So there is a bit of compression in there, but it's not kind of super squishy. The other one is the Minotaur. So if I turn that on, and you'll see the gain is really low, the tone's up a little bit, and the level's up a bit. And that's going to give you that kind of extra little bit of sparkle. And there's a sweet spot around here that doesn't really give you any distortion, but it gives you just a little bit of a mid-range character, and it sounds like that. So it kind of does that. I'm on the position 4, so the neck and the middle pickup. Just check. Ross, I've run out of coffee. What should I do? Go to the store and get some coffee and make some coffee. I have coffee here. You're welcome round, John. So that's kind of that. If I put the compressor and that Minotaur on together, you suddenly get that kind of vibe. So without the Minotaur, super clean. With the Minotaur, but not the compressor. Put them both on together. So it's got a little bit of hair, but not tons. Still kind of, you put that in a mix, in a track or with a band, yeah, you absolutely have a clean sound, even though that's got a little bit of hair, like I said, and you can dig in and it's super dynamic. It cleans up really well as well. So that's kind of that, and without butchering too many John Mayer riffs, that kind of that extra sparkle that the Minotaur gives you. Keep pointing to the pod go like you can see me. You can't even see me, and that's a good thing. It does that kind of. vibrato arm there, which would have been bad. So, there we go. So that's you kind of, that's your core sound. And I mean, I'm hoping that comes across okay, but it's clean with just a little bit of hair. That extra little mid-range bump kind of makes a big deal as well. And that's going to get you 80% of kind of John Mayer stuff, really. So the reason I'm using that amp, it's it's got that kind of nice clarity, but it's got this big, thick low end. Like I said, that big, thick low end you will get from the Two Rock. The solid kind of mid range would come from the Dumble, and then I think it's a vintage Fender Bandmaster user. That's going to give you that super shimmery top end. Add the Minotaur in there. That's just going to give the front end a boost. And then the compressor just kind of smooths things out a little bit and makes poor people like me be able to play a little bit sweeter, and gives you kind of some more control of the dynamic. Can this Constantine? Can this preset help me get chicks like John Mayer do? Yes, maybe. I'll make the preset available. You download it, and you too could maybe get chicks like John Mayer. Maybe. No guarantees. I never make promises. So there's another tone, another major tone that John uses, and that's actually kind of what you would consider for him quite high gain. What you'll find with John's rig is he's got multiple EQ pedals, he's got multiple drive pedals, and he achieves kind of a gainier tone by stacking multiple low drives. So if we just switch back to edit real quick, you'll see what I've done here. Now, I've chosen this one, and I need to stop pointing at I'll go because you can't see it. And I'm going to sip of coffee, excuse me. There we go. So the Air Apparent, the pedal that's based on is it's kind of a modified version of the old kind of big black box Marshall Bluesbreaker pedal, which turns out is an awesome clean boost, and does a really cool drive sound as well. It's kind of low gain. You can't get a great deal of gain out of it, and certainly not a lot of volume. But when you stack that into the Minotaur and you add that compressor, it's suddenly got that kind of thick but smooth gain. So without it, you kind of do the bluesy stuff, old man blues licks. So that was like 80 sweet right there, and a bad one of that. Let's turn the Air Apparent on, and you'll notice the gain's kind of low. I'm in boost mode, which is actually the lowest gain setting for this particular model. You've got the normal and the higher gain. I've got it higher. The tone's kind of up there. The drive, I've got it on 9 volt voltage, 6.8, and it does that. Out of the Continuum thing, but in the same kind of era, it does that thing really well too. So there's just about enough mid-range in there. If I turn the compressor off, again, you'll kind of hear that clicky thing that the compressor does kind of disappears. Compressor back on. Again, I can't comment on how it's come across with you fine people, but kind of in the room, that does that. Sounds really pleasant in the oh, good, nice. That's what I'm going for. Andrew Bonica, hey buddy, you all right? What this kind of does, that compressor, and I can actually turn that monitor off. And you get a kind of similar thing, slightly higher gain, and it's that kind of. So the difference between the two drives, that's kind of nice and shimmery. That's a little bit fatter. Kind of a little bit beefier in the low end, a little bit more mids, but you still got that kind of sparkle. And the cool thing about stacking, and these are both kind of fairly transparent drives, but when you stack them together, they certainly have a character. When you stack them together, you still have the transparent thing, but you get more gain. You boost it with a compressor, and it's that you can still hear the guitar. So we'll go to the neck pickup. Go to the bridge pickup. So you can kind of hear the guitar, and if I switch to one with humbuckers or semi-hollow or whatever, you're going to hear that, and that's kind of an important part of John's rig is the transparency. It's a big, thick sound, but it still cuts through, and you can hear the kind of the quality of each individual guitar thing. Okay, so that's that. That's kind of, like I say, those three pedals into that amp, that's going to get you 90% of what John does. And yeah, there's other effects involved. Discovered recently that in the studio he would use $5,000 reverbs and stuff, but for the most part it's amp reverb, 2 or 3 kind of gain pedals. He does use the little green thing, the little green overdrive box again, and if I just swap this really quick, I can show you that it certainly does a thing. I don't think it does it in the same way as the Air Apparent, but it's that kind of quality. So again, on this, I've got the gain low, I've got the tone quite high, and the level full up, which is the typical way to use that. And it sounds like so that's his kind of higher gain stuff. If I turn the thing off and the thing, so this is just so this is the Screamo L8. It's kind of cool. Put the compressor back on. Monitor on, compressor off. So you can hear it's the 808 is a very different character to the Air Apparent. The Air Apparent is a lot glassier sounding, but warmer at the same time, and it's absolutely my favorite pedal in there. So we're going to go to my other preset, and this is where it gets a little bit fruity, and I have to shout out. I kind of made some tweaks to this earlier, and my buddy John Cordy, and you should go and subscribe to John Cordy because he's a cool guy and a cool player. He told me that I've got the particular filter effect for this wrong, and he told me which one to do, and absolutely. So John, thank you for that. So let's go to the kind of funky one. Let's just see comments. Just check. Can I have your autograph, Andrew? I'll give you a big hug, mate. Is that any better? Definitely not better than Johnny Self. Yes, this Pacifica is awesome. I do like it a lot. I have a question. Can I get an open G tuning with the line 6 tuning, but not say also open E? No. I've just kind of realized what you're asking. No, certainly not at the moment. Maybe in a future update. Who knows? But no, you can't. The best thing to do that, I think, is Variax, because it's all individual string kind of tunings, and it's really cool and definitely worth checking out if you have not already. So back to edit. So I've got these on there. I'm going to turn that off. So we've got that kind of sound still. And that's that kind of glassy. Oh, that was awful. Sorry. That was still awful. Yeah, nearly swore. Sorry. I'll get it. It'll be worth it. Maybe not. It's that kind of thing. But we don't want that on. But we do want this on. So the filter in this is actually a really hard thing to get right, because filter effects as a general rule are kind of dynamic, and they respond to your playing style, and certainly pickup selection. You don't want anything going into them, because you're going to change the way that that it responds. So you really kind of want a filter effect right at the start of your chain, nothing going into it. Yeah, there's the wah going into there, but we're not using that. But this is an effect that you play, and you need all of those dynamics. So that's going to be my basic clean sound. Turn the filter on, so I'm using the Tron up. Thank you again, John. So we've got frequency set like that. We've got a band pass. The range is low, and the level is just at unity. And if you actually listen to that track where he's using this, it's not as kind of quacky as you might think. So you can kind of get real funky with this. You know, you can certainly get real funky with that. This actual track, it doesn't kind of the virtual mouth, if you like, of that filter doesn't open too wide. So it's yeah, it's that kind of thing, and it keeps it quite mellow. Again, look, there's no rules. If you want to play it, perfectly, then you want to play quite lightly. Certainly with these settings, again, the pickups I'm using aren't great for this. They're kind of a bit more scooped sounding than a vintage pickup might sound. And the certain, yeah, they're certainly higher output. And I've taken them right as far down as I can get them as well to try and lower the output. But I've got to work with what I've got. So tweak these settings as to your guitar, should I say. So yeah, it does that. And that's kind of the other sound, really. Look at my pretty face again. Like I said, I'll make these available, and I'll post the link. I should have done that earlier. Apologies, but I'll make these presets available. Use them as a good benchmark. Again, depending on what you're monitoring with, and again, just for reference, I'm monitoring on a pair of Yamaha HS7s, and you can tweak this for your guitar. You'll probably just tweak maybe the amp settings more than anything. But the John Mayer sound is all about kind of it's clear, but it's thick and beefy. Remember, the actual kind of sound you're hearing is a combination of at least kind of 2, maybe 3 amps and multiple microphones. So, with Podgo, you are limited to what you can do, but you can certainly get in the ballpark, which is kind of why we've said this is an inspired by. And yeah, the goal is, I think, stacking multiple transparent, whatever that means, transparent overdrives, low gain together to get your high gain. And yeah, that filter effect is it's troublesome to dial in. So tweak that for your guitar. If you've got a high output, active pickups or whatever, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to roll your volume back slightly, but that's a good starting point. hopefully that's kind of come across okay and sounds something like the mighty John Mayer. So let's check the comments, make sure I'm up to do. I'm going to get you a 611 now, aren't I? I've only just got my mate right there. Sorry. You can have that one when I'm done. The air apparent sounds dope. It does. I told you, John. Just Tony. Thought pedals. Yeah, man. Yeah, Andrew. They sound cool. And that's kind of my thing. You know, John's after a man after my own heart. Is that the right way of saying that? If it's not, sorry, might sound wrong. Yeah. You know, I get a lot of my kind of higher gain sounds or solo sounds from stacking multiple drive pedals together, and that just kind of works for me. You'll notice in all the amps that John uses, they're all single channel amps, and it gets all his gain from drive pedals. And like I say, if you kind of choose those, you know, the pedals with very little character, if any, that's going to get you a lot closer. You want to hear the guitar. You want to hear what the guitar is doing, basically. So really nice tones. So glad I picked Pod Go. Thank you very much. Sounds like an auto. Well, yeah. I mean, yes, Constantine. That's kind of what it is. Yeah, it was based on the old Mutron. And I think John uses the Electro Harmonix Qtron in more recent years. So yeah, it's a filter, but ultimately it's kind of an auto wah. You could potentially do it with your foot, but then you know it's a different vibe. So yeah, that Tron up is definitely the way forward. I think the mutant filter within Podgo works really well too. So you know, check them out, see which one kind of fits to your ears. These tones were created with me just going to and from YouTube and just kind of and the actual tracks and going, right, okay, what am I hearing here? And then just trying to get it somewhere close. Like I say, I've got a limited setup here. I don't have $500,000 of backline. Got far more than that technically in Podgo, but it's a good starting point. I'll put the link up. Go and download them. I hope everyone's staying safe and well, and everyone is keeping good. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, we've got more of these coming up every week, every Tuesday, same time, same place. The other guys do a great job. We've got Nick, Doc, and Tony making awesome sounds. Loads more of these coming up. Loads more artist tones. Loads more little tips and tricks for Podgo. So come back next week. Tune in. Thanks for watching. See you again. Cheers.